Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. There might be a difference too, obviously, from being at the high school and college level, like you're recruiting every player there with the expectation that they can help you win, like they can play. And sometimes you find out that it's not a great fit after the fact. But at the high school level, where at a small private school where I'm at, we've got 6 or 7, maybe 8 guys, but then a lot of guys that maybe have come up through the program that do want to be a part of it. I think maybe the challenge for me or guys in that position then is to, yes, like, and you said it, like there has to be more to this than just basketball that they're getting out of it. And maybe helping them to come around and see those great attributes about being a part of a team, being a part of this program. But then also, I think it's up to me to find their value, and let them, there has to be more that they can bring to our program than just what they do on the floor, and maybe giving them confidence in that, because I feel like deep down, a lot of players just do want to feel, whether they are playing or not, that they're bringing value and that they feel valued from the team and the coach.
Yeah. I mean, we see it, from freshmen to seniors. I mean, we've had through the years, kids that freshman, sophomore don't play much. Junior year, maybe play a little, but don't ever really break in. And even as seniors have been some of our best leaders. I mean, we had, even a player this year that early in the year was starting, ended up late in the year and really not playing. But one of our most positive, helpful, didn't try to do too much in terms of team leadership, but really helped everybody. I mean, those people are vital. I mean, they're just rare and they're very, very valuable. And, and then there's some as freshmen who you don't expect to play and they end up playing. And how do they handle that? Because that's not easy to handle. Sometimes it may give them a bigger impression of value on the team than it should. Those are such dynamic, unusual situations that I just don't feel like this is the blueprint we use and it always works.
Yeah.
Some of it's just personalities and team by team, the dynamic of that player to the rest of the team. There's so many intricacies to really forming what I call just a team. I mean, that can handle whatever comes, the good and the bad, and they don't waver. They're consistent.
Yeah.
And but that takes a lot of maturity. It takes a lot, and I appreciate our players because they've shown a lot of maturity to handle a lot of this.
Coach, I love the "you're not that important" tagline. I think it's so countercultural because since from a young age, especially with parents growing up now with cell phones, like some of these kids have been videoed so much and shown their videos and their photos, and it's the whole world is revolved around them, to where when they come to your program and then they're told, you know what, you're not that important. Now, obviously, within the context, they have to understand that context, because in the grand scheme of things, of course they're important. But how do you explain that to them, and how does that work with your culture?
Yeah, really, whenever we start, even in the recruiting process, from the very first time we talk with these kids, we tell them that right up front that, listen, I mean, if you come here, everything's not going to revolve around you. We're not going to, when people come on a recruiting business, we don't put their picture on the big video board and provide them with all these, parade type situations that aren't going to be real when they're in school here. We want them to see you're going to be just one of the team. We get them around our girls, for our girls can determine what their personality is, which is always huge for us. But just to let them know, we're going to have a great team. We're going to be as good as we can be, whether you come or not. But if you come here, you're going to have to give yourself up. You're not going to get what you want. To me, there's a great attraction to that. People, when you get down to it, you really don't want everything for yourself. That's a miserable way to live.
Yeah.
And these days, so many people are trying it and finding out how miserable it is. That quality and the quality of patience are just two things that we've totally lost. And so for us here, they're going to know you're going to have to be patient if you want to come play because it's not going to happen quick. It might, but usually it takes a few years for you even to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
For some of the players. And so, patience and the sacrificial attitude of it's not about me, whatever it takes to help the team. It's just a constant reminder that we have to tell them. We tell the parents that their parents are going to love them and want the best for them more than they do for the team. I mean, that's just a fact, and that's fine. That's why it should be. But as coaches, that's our decision making is not based on what's good for you. But we want to tell them that right up front. So if a kid's wanting to be the prima donna that can really play, that's awesome. And there's a place that you may go somewhere and beat us because you're that good of a player, but it's not our locker room is going to be what we want it. Whether on the court it works out perfectly or not.
And I think that's the great dilemma. Almost, I mean, obviously, what do you want? You want the most talented player who also is so high character and selfless. But
yeah,
those are pretty rare. But I would imagine your culture is special in the way it is because sometimes you might be giving up a little bit more talent, like you just said, but you're going to have the right mindset and the right bodies on the bus that's going to take it the direction you really want it to go.
Well, yeah, that's the desire, and I'm sure every coach, has that desire. It's just we just have to demand we're not going to trade one for the other. We talk about wanting the kids to be teachable, to be together, to be trustworthy. We can trust them. Thankful kids, but we also want to be tough. I mean, we have kids that are tough-minded, but I think you learn toughness through, grinding around, through not getting what you want, through having to, maybe give up yourself for someone else. And then you find out, man, I really like that. And it just develops a mindset of others, thinking about it. It's really hard to be in a bad or to be selfish if you're thinking about someone else. Just do something for somebody else. And that's what we're trying to get across. And these are going to be tremendous wives and mothers in the years ahead, just because they really example that. So we're fortunate to get kids from great families.
Yeah.
We're not reforming these kids. We're not getting players and we're not all of a sudden making them these good people. Our job is really easy. We just get good players that are good kids and put them together.
Yeah.
And that's all we're doing as coaches. It's just, you got to find those right kids.
Speaking of toughness, I had a teammate that was 6'8" or 9, big and strong, could really shoot it, coach. Like he was our best 3-point shooter, but he was just not a banger. Like he just the best rebounder. Back when I played, the message boards were coming around, and he would just get blasted on those things about the lack of toughness, how he was never on the block. But I mean, people didn't really appreciate then a great shooting big like he was. Mm-hmm. Like now, I think he'd be appreciated a lot more. But
right,
my question, I guess, is, can you create toughness? Does there already have to be a level of it there, or like at a place like Grapevine Faith Christian School, where I've told, like, if they're here, their lives have been pretty good if they're at this school. Right. Where do you land on that?
Yeah, because you want kids that are compassionate, caring, kids that think of others first, but you also want them to have a little fight and scrap in them. Last summer, every summer we read a book as a team. This summer, we're going to read, we just started Unoffendable by Brent Hansen, but it's a great book. It's not even an athletic book. Last year we read Toughness, the Jay Billis book, Toughness.
Nice.
Because I thought we were going to need a little bit of a mindset of just a fighting mindset.
Hmm.
So, anyways, going through that, and it's really a really good book. And it talked about you can't be tough alone. You have to be tough together. You need people to be tough. But
I
he
like
went through all
that.
kinds of basketball analogies. Really good book. Uh, I think it can be developed. I think you can. I do think there's some repetition of physical things, mental things that can develop it and improve it. Some kids just have it, and some kids may not ever really. Uh, it's just not maybe natural for them. But I think they can be put in situations that they sort of see the value of fighting through things, being
Yeah.
tough minded. And so again, it's not a even we had some Marines come do sort of like a boot camp with us before the season. Just those little things of just endure it, fight through it. Uh, so toughness. So often we think it's the flexing, it's the
Right.
stepping over someone on the court. To me, it's the I charged, I made a bad play. I'm going to help my opponent up, give the ball to the ref, and go back and play defense. I mean, people may not think that that's very tough, but that takes incredible toughness to not respond negatively to something. It's the body language you have. It's not the showing up anybody
Yep.
or the great play. It's the hidden things that you keep yourself from doing. Maybe is more the toughness than is the things that you do.
I think you're right on the money. I think that's the challenge maybe for coaches is helping your players to understand what does toughness mean to you. Because if you just say we're not very tough, well, there's going to be guys that automatically think we need to fight. I mean, coaches, I'm not going to go into this story because it would take too long, but have you ever heard of Horatio Llamas?
I have not.
Okay, so he was. I went to play in Mexico for a week. This was in my late 20s. It was a group of Americans. We went to play against the Mexican Olympic team, and we're traveling around to play 6 games over 7 days with them. And basically, like the Washington Generals are just supposed to get beat by the Globetrotters. That's what we were for this team to drum up some excitement for their Olympic team. Well, they had Horatio Llamas, who was a 7-foot, 300-pound guy. He had played in the NBA for the Phoenix Suns, largest human being I've ever seen. So long story short, to show toughness to my teammates because we weren't playing very well, I picked a fight with him, and he broke my eye socket. And it ended up being it's one of my greatest moments of all time, but it's the dumbest moment of all time. And there's a little town in Mexico that they hopefully they still remember that moment. But that's what I think players think when we're saying toughness. But to your point, in our style of play, coach, toughness is shooting the next 3 after you've missed 4, but you're supposed to shoot that 5th one. Toughness for us is getting the ball out and upping it fast and continuing to play with pace, even though the other team is scoring against us, not letting our joy diminish. I think that's maybe the challenge is that we do a better job of, instead of like toughness is on our board. But if I don't really show them or tell them what toughness means, I'm going to have, just like shot selection, I'm going to have 5 different dudes thinking tough is 5 different things.
Right. Yeah. Good point of just explaining it well with actions. To me, it's always, we talk about what does it look like, not what does it look like when you see it? And so even showing video clips, there have been times I've shown video clips of negative foul reactions after, I said, that is not what we're going to do. I mean, you don't want to show them bad examples, but sometimes we have to learn from that. But, that is not toughness.
Yeah.
This over here, or even a response to a turnover, what do we do? So really, defining it well, and then celebrating even in practice, saying that's what we need right there, as opposed to, we try to catch them doing right, not punish them from doing wrong. There's different ways of doing practice, but we really we're not doing any negative running, negative. We try to find them. Hey, that's what we want. Let's mimic that. Let's, as opposed to punishing something for being wrong.
Now, I think you could say this goes back to culture from day one and the types of players that you're recruiting. But has it ever been? Because I love the idea of you focusing on what they're doing well and trying to promote that. Because typically, players, in my opinion, they want to please. And when they hear someone else being praised for something, odds are they're not going to go the opposite direction. Because again, if you have those players, then what are we doing? Like you got to wonder why they're even on your team to begin with, that because they're not buying in. Let's say the effort dips, or what is a non-negotiable for you that, hey, at this point we just got to get on the line, or there has to be something team-wide that's a negative consequence?
Yeah, to me, the mental mistakes of coming out just not mentally, sometimes physically you're going to be a little off, but just the mental, we know, just a drill. We just showed what we're doing. We've done it every day, or I explained it enough to where they should know. Those are things early on. The lack of clarity and the lack of focus, that's usually they know that's not a good way to go. Uh, the physical mistakes, the turnovers, sometimes those are just good plays by the defense. Sometimes when you're coaching your team in practice, a good play by one team is a bad play for the other team. So it's hard to sometimes, gauge, well, is that punishable, or is that just really good play? But it's when we honestly have not had, it's been a while since we have just kids not playing hard.
And then that's what I thought it might be a hard question for you to answer, because you're recruiting the right kind of kids. But
I'm telling you, it's been a long, long time since I just felt like, we're just not going hard. Let's just go to the track and run.
Yeah.
And so, again, I appreciate our players, and they just hold each other to that standard. If it ever is, I might look at one of the leaders, say, hey, you need to get them, and they'll take care of it, and let the players sort of self-correct quickly instead of me blowing up and having a temper tantrum or something. And so, yeah. That is sort of a hard question. We don't deal with that.
That's fair. There's probably a lot of high school coaches that are like, oh yeah, I deal with that every day. And
sure.
but
and understandable.
Yeah.
And that's not to their discredit, because again, they're taking the players that are coming to play. I mean, they're not,
and they're still becoming, and forming. And a lot of times, I mean, these behaviors that we see in practice, I mean, those are learned from somewhere. And so, we're at Faith, we talk about partnering with parents, and sometimes that's easier said than done.
Certainly. Yeah. And there's, we have at the top of our locker room going down to the court, the top landing says ignore the noise. And at the bottom of the stairs says protect the team. But because there's so much noise especially for y'all, and in the age those kids are in the high school cage, and then even in some areas where there's so many other AAU coach or a trainer or all these people that want to have some say in what happens and how a kid plays, and they just got to learn to ignore the noise and just take care of their team. I mean, it's constant noise these days.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is. They've got to learn. We've got to learn to shut up and listen. And those kids need to learn to turn stuff off. They have to develop that skill, because even this year, we had one time I said, bring a book to the gym. And we sat for 30 minutes and they just read a book in silence together. I just said, we just need to, because some of them don't like to read. They need to learn to read. I think everybody needs to learn to like to read.
Yeah.
Just to discipline themselves that you can actually sit for 30 minutes quietly without sleeping and without watching something on a screen. And it went by so fast for them. They were like, wow, they enjoyed the time. And a lot of them like to do that on their own. But it was just, I wanted to make a point of, sometimes you got to slow down and cut the noise out.
What made you think to do that? I'm always fascinated with when coaches talk about, I was watching the Ted Lasso episode a few weeks ago where he takes them to the season 3. He takes them, instead of practicing, to the sewers to learn about the sewer system. And there's but it was just on a whim. Like, what made you think to change the routine and to do something different like that?
Yeah, I think it was just, it was sort of a time of year. I think it was near before Christmas break and finals. There was just sort of a lot of hecticness going on in life, and stress and strain. And that's when we have to learn to just calm down and take a moment, breathe deeply. So I think that's what led me to it is that, and I know a couple of our players too. There's a few that don't like to read. They've said, "Yeah, I don't like to read," and I just wanted them to find out you can actually do it. And so it was probably both of those things combined that got me to say, "We're going to sit there and do it."
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.